Hal, what more can we do? What more can our allies and partners do to pressure Russia, to put pain on Russia, to maybe make them de-escalate? Right now, it doesn't seem like that is happening, of course.
I think tomorrow's sanctions regime, whatever they announce, will be very telling. I would expect a swift action on SWIFT, if you will, the international banking or the international financial transfer mechanism. I don't know if it'll be a complete shutdown of their ability to use to basically operate under SWIFT, but I do expect that something will be done within that arena to dramatically restrict the ability of Russian corporations, Russian individuals, certainly key Russian individuals and their family members from doing anything in the international sphere. I would not be surprised to see something done on the maritime domain, where perhaps Russian flag carriers or Russian owned ships may be detained in port for a considerable period of time. Some of this is a bit of a nuisance. There is a dollar cost that put to this. They also might block Russian flights from going to certain capital cities. There's a lot of things that I expect to see happen. One of the things, though, and this is, it's rather gruesome, but we're in war. And war is tough business, all right? There's a lot of damage, there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of death, and certainly a lot of suffering that occurs in war. One of the things that this has now moved into is we're beyond sanctions, we're beyond just pressure moves. The dynamics of what happens on the ground, the military force on force dynamics, how many tanks we take out, how many or I should say the Ukraine forces take out, how many BMPs, BTRs, all those other things are out there. This is going to determine a lot. And I go back to that basic vulnerability the Russians have, which is they don't have a depth to their forces. They've got somewhere around 65, 75% of their operational ground combat units already committed. And I'm not the only person out there who's analyzed this that says the longer this goes on and the higher the attrition, the worse this gets for Putin, because it becomes unsustainable. And I think over time that's going to happen. This will start out as a high intensity mechanized ground war with a lot of air and everything else. Once this goes into an insurgency, once this goes into the urban areas, the advantages that Russia has start to dissipate greatly. I'm not saying you can't use tanks and armored vehicles in urban terrain. Yes, you can. But they lose maneuver space, their speed doesn't matter, and they're very vulnerable to attack. And that's where when armored forces move into that sort of territory, this, whether it's the suburbs or major urban areas, that's where you're going to see a tremendous amount of casualties, a tremendous amount of damage. And if there's nothing to back that up, if there isn't that second string, if they can't relieve those units, if they can't replace the personnel, they can't do all those things, over time, those units become combat ineffective. The whole thing bogs down. Once that thing bogs down, and once it becomes a massive insurgency, Ukraine may have a bit of an advantage. Once they simply become an insurgent force, a guerrilla force, if you will, an unconventional force, basically killing Russian personnel and taking out their vehicles and doing all these other things that go with war, it may shift dramatically. And I look at this and I say, if that happens, if that occurs, you may see enough backblast politically, economically, and socially to Russia where there could be the forces coalesce for a regime change. This, that I don't see how that would go any other way.
Yeah.
If that scenario occurs.
And Hal, we're just having a live look there at Maidan Square. It's about 6:30 on a very early Thursday morning. I just want to reiterate, and you made this very clear, that U.S. troops are shoring up our eastern flank in our allies, NATO ally countries. Right now, there are no American troops in Ukraine. That is not on the table. President Biden has said that as much. So I just wanted to make sure we got that out. I know some people probably don't think it needs to be said, but others might think it does need to be said. I also just want to put up some of the video here that we had of
Существовать с постоянной угрозой.
And apologize for the audio there, but that's the address that he gave on Russian state television earlier today. And he said he does not want to occupy Ukraine. He essentially was saying that they want to go in there and, his words, denazify Ukraine. Maybe you can help us tease that out. I'm not entirely sure what he meant by that. But that is what he did today. He declared a special military operation. He said, our analysis has concluded that our confrontation with these Ukrainian forces is inevitable. He said dedicated military officers will conduct their duties with professionalism and courage. He says we cannot tolerate the threat that emanates from modern Ukraine. Hal, also back to your point on more sanctions. Many lawmakers are issuing statements right now saying that they want SWIFT on the table. They want to cut Russia off from the international banking system. One just came in from Senator Marsha Blackburn. Others are coming in, I believe, from Marco Rubio as well. They want that on the table.
They absolutely do, and I expect to see something happening tomorrow. The pressure on the White House, the Biden administration, to basically go all in is incredible back there. Look, Capitol Hill has been a buzz today with a lot of strong language on sanctions, and certainly with what's happened tonight, the manner of which it's happened, and the fact that there's explosions in Kyiv and other major cities far away from eastern Ukraine. That changes things. I mean, frankly, in the psyche of European capitals, to have a European capital being attacked like this has a gut feel. And I think that's going to translate into our ability to coalesce this, not just NATO, but all European nations into helping Ukraine. We're going to be sending a lot of aid. There's going to be humanitarian aid. There's going to be a lot of other things going into Ukraine. We have a big border, NATO, I should say, has a big border that they're dealing with. You got NATO members to the north, the Baltic states, but you also got this, Poland, Romania right there. We're bolstering up all those countries, but we also have a border where we can ship humanitarian aid. And frankly, we've been shipping military aid. We've been shipping very lethal military aid, anti-tank missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, things like that, manned portable. The reason I say that manned portable piece, and the reason I bring that up is this potentially devolves into an insurgency. The ability to wield weapons like this in terms of small light infantry units becomes very, very important. That's how they attack. They don't have huge tank formations in an insurgency. What you have is a lot of light infantry out there doing things, looking for vulnerabilities, looking for units that are separated or units that are badly positioned, and taking advantage of them. That's what's going to happen. And I think you're going to see an increased flow of materials going into Ukraine for as long as there is a Ukraine government. And then if Russia ends up occupying the whole country, I imagine there's going to be folks who are very, very accomplished in the covert arts. Yeah. In terms of helping Ukraine as best they can in that regard.
Yeah, Kyiv is a city of 2.9 million people, and so they are on pins and needles early this morning. Hal, also we were talking about in earlier conversations this week where in the event that the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian president need to flee, where would they seek refuge and exile? We have been talking about possibly Poland. Also, we were talking about the mettle of Russian troops, about their willingness to engage in this conflict, their morale to be all in. Do they feel this is their cause celeb? So still some questions on that. Of course, we have heard time and time again, the Ukrainian people, they want to defend their sovereign territory tooth and nail, and we've been, seeing pictures of civilian forces training and the like. So that will be interesting as well. I know you have to go very, very soon here, but we're getting daybreak now in Kyiv. It looks to be quite overcast. And we're hearing reports of explosions in many of these major cities. No civilian flights over the airspace of Ukraine. what do you think we can expect in the next hour, 2 hours, several hours?
I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more explosions, hear more explosions. I think at some point we're going to lose communications. I think at some point, whether it's a cyber attack or whatever, we're going to have a period of darkness. And then we're going to be looking at a lot of satellite photos. There's tremendous commercial satellite photo capability. We'll be getting that. We'll be getting a lot of very more detailed, a lot of very interesting but more detailed statements coming from the Pentagon and from other official sources, as they will know what's going on. And we're going to hear more about that. And, you know, initially the government would fall back to, you know, Western, the more Western region of Ukraine. But I think eventually you're going to see the government maybe have to set up a government in exile type of thing. Again, I'm going back to World War II when I'm talking about things like this, a government in exile that operate in Poland. And then you have this massive insurgency. And frankly, I don't know what's going through Putin's mind on this, because all the reports coming out on the Russian forces is that morale is pretty bad. In fact, some of the basic things like accounting for your forces, there's a report that in Belarus, they actually left soldiers at a train station, and it wasn't the soldiers were trying to desert or anything. They just got left because nobody was taking account. It was a number of soldiers. That sort of incompetence at the small unit level, just keeping track of your personnel, that tells me a lot. That's a big indicator that they've got some very fundamental problems. It's one thing to line up a bunch of tanks on the border and look impressive. It's another thing to go out there and operate as a maneuver unit. And this is not the Soviet Union. Even with all the improvements they've made, this is not the old Soviet Union. This isn't the same standards. And a lot of those conscripts, poorly led, mistreated. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, this is not 2014. They are motivated. They're fighting for their homeland. And frankly, I think they're going to put up a heck of a fight for every square inch of Ukraine. And over time, you may see them counterattacking and actually eliminating some of those battalions that are coming down. I fully expect something like that. And as those forces are further attrited and Russia's ability to pay for this war is gravely degraded as well, I think we're going to hit a tipping point. There's going to be a tipping point inside Russia, and there's going to be a tipping point in the war ahead. But it's going to be horrific. Yeah. I just want, brace yourself. This is not Iraq. This is not even Afghanistan. It's not even Chechnya. It's definitely not Georgia. It's going to be horrific. The number of casualties are going to be stunning. But that's what this type of warfare is.